The next thing I wanted to talk to you about, it's something I alluded to earlier, and that is the police brutality that you experienced at Justin Trudeau's daily morning show, where lazy journalists ask a simple man easy questions. You went there, you tried to attend, just like every other journalist seems to be attending these things, except you're not like every other journalist. You have tough questions you want to ask. And you were strong armed by the RCMP, and I think everybody's seen that footage. And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because we're seeing a lot of public outcry from Canadian journalists now all of a sudden that American journalists are being hassled as they report on these race riots, I guess, happening in the United States. They're outraged at these American journalists who are getting confused for rioters, it seems like, by the police. And yet, mum's the word when it comes to Keean Bexte getting his arm bent behind his back and marched off the Rideau compound. What do you have to say about this double standard from the mainstream media?
It's always a double standard with the mainstream media. It's a double standard when it comes to the facts that they look at on police brutality. It's a double standard when they're complaining to the masses about who gets priority questions or who gets led into these areas at all. As you mentioned, I was strong-armed out of the Rideau compound, and not even a week later, Travis something from Global News, who's part of the Toronto Bureau for Global News covering Queen's Park and Doug Ford, he's been complaining that he hasn't gotten a question all week. Can you imagine?
Cinderella.
Because he asked a tough question. And granted, the question was pretty tough. It was asking for Doug Ford to hold himself accountable, and does he take responsibility for the state of long-term care homes, which is a whole nother conversation to have about those being public or privatized. But the guy said that question was a little bit too harsh, and now he hasn't gotten a question given to him by partisan staffers at Doug Ford's office. It's the same problem we're facing right now, except for we've never gotten a question. We've been calling and burned 2 months of my life trying to call and get into this place. And it's just never worked out. But he doesn't get a question in a week, and, well, Global News is sounding the alarm bells. It is a total double standard. It's a total joke. They obviously only care about themselves. They don't care about asking tough questions. They just want the attention.
Yeah, and it's funny how insular they are. Like, we've been having this fight very publicly with the Trudeau government. I guess the fight goes back to the Debates Commission. We've been fighting for journalistic access, and we've been very public about it. The people who like us know about it, and even some of the people who hate us know about it. But this gaggle of reporters, you'd think that you would know about these battles for press freedom because you're a journalist and you care about press freedom. But they really have no idea about the work that we are doing and the money that we are spending to not only protect our right to report, but theirs too, their right to ask Doug Ford a question if they so choose, if they ask a tough question and get booted. They just don't care because they don't like the people who are doing the work they aren't willing to do.
Yeah, you're right about that. When I first started at the Rebel, I thought that the CBC and Global News and CTV, they were all out to get us. They were specifically silencing and ignoring stories that we broke, or not even or crediting us when we break stories, like when you broke Omar Khadr, and whereas he was hiding his money, they took that story and then just sort of republished it after the National Post sort of washed it. I think that they are not actually doing this maliciously. I think that they're just incompetent. I think that their circles, their journalism school circles, are so close-knit that every journalist in Canada knows every journalist. I mean, every mainstream media journalist knows every other mainstream media journalist from Calgary to Toronto, because they all live in Toronto. They all live in Ottawa. You might even notice that the Globe and Mail has a new Calgary-based reporter that is going to cover all stories Calgary. But guess where she's living? She's living in Toronto. These
Yeah.
people all know each other, and if it's outside of their bubble, it's foreign to them, and it just goes right over their head. So when they hear stories that we break, they just assume that the person that told them it is giving them some sort of like secret tip, and they've never even watched Rebel News. I'm sure of it at this point,
Yeah.
because you couldn't post like that saying, "Oh, like talking about Travis's week-long plight to ask a question." You couldn't post about something like that and not know that we've had several videos go viral across Canada where a significant portion of the Canadian population has seen me get dragged out of Rideau Cottage while I'm trying to ask the Prime Minister a question and not even allude to that issue or that story. It's just these people are a joke.
If you'd like to get access to my show as well as other great TV style shows too, like Ezra's Nightly Ezra Levant Show and David Menzies' Friday night show, Rebel Roundup, just go to rebelnews.com/subscribe. That's rebelnews.com/subscribe.